After landing on a mysterious island, a film crew is forced to fight for survival, surrounded by bizarre monsters, while attempting to rescue an actress captured by a gigantic gorilla. We find ourselves in the year 1933, a period during which the United States is undergoing an economic recovery following the 1929 crisis. In order to make a living, actress Anne Darrow and her colleagues strive to attract audiences to their shows, yet, unfortunately, the number of spectators has begun to decline dramatically. Manny, the owner of the theater company and a close associate of Anne, informs his team that he will be leaving New York. This news deeply unsettles Anne, who wonders how she will manage to earn a living. Determined to find a solution, she embarks on a search for a new job opportunity. At the same time, in another part of the city, director Carl Denham attempts to persuade investors to back his newest film. He shows them a map revealing the existence of an unknown island, inhabited by a primitive civilization untouched by modern society. Carl intends to shoot his film there, but the investors grow skeptical and decide to cancel the project. Overhearing their conversation, Carl leaves before receiving official notification and gathers his film crew to set off immediately. While wandering the city streets, Carl spots Anne and realizes that she is the perfect actress for his film. He invites her to lunch and explains the project to her, trying to convince her to take the lead role. At first, Anne refuses, but when she learns that screenwriter Jack Driscoll is part of the team, she changes her mind. Soon, the entire crew boards a ship, embarking on a perilous adventure toward the mysterious island. As the journey continues, the crew faces numerous unexpected dangers. The ship, struggling in dense fog, collides with a massive rock formation, and the captain realizes that countless boulders surround the vessel. Amid the ensuing chaos, the ship sustains significant damage, with holes appearing along its hull. While the crew frantically attempts repairs, Carl seizes the chance to take a boat and row toward the island, accompanied by the recording team.
Upon arrival, the group is confronted with a macabre sight. Human skulls scattered all around, which Carl meticulously films. After several hours of trekking, they discover what appears to be a ruined settlement, only to soon realize that mysterious inhabitants still dwell there. Suddenly, Carl spots a young girl and attempts to communicate with her, offering her a chocolate bar. Unfamiliar with these people, the girl becomes frightened, bites the offered hand, and flees into the arms of an elderly woman whose grim appearance startles Carl. In that moment, the filmmaker notices that numerous natives are watching them.
It isn't long before the first tragedy strikes. Mike is killed by a spear driven into his body. Determined to eliminate the group, the natives begin to surround them. Jack launches an attack in a bid to protect Anne, but he is overwhelmed by the sheer number of attackers. The assault continues until the captain and members of his crew, armed with firearms, arrive to fend off the assailants. As the natives retreat, the rescuers help the survivors board the ship, attempting to shed excess weight in the hope of setting sail once more. Meanwhile, the natives hatch a plan to invade the ship and capture one of the passengers as a sacrificial offering. Upon boarding, an intruder loses one of his possessions and heads toward his cabin. It isn't long before Jack discovers an object made of skulls and realizes that the ship has been infiltrated. Worried for the woman he has fallen in love with, the playwright rushes to her room, only to soon find that Anne has been kidnapped. Once the crew finally manages to set the ship in motion, Jack breaks the tragic news to everyone, and the men feel compelled to rescue the actress. Meanwhile, Anne is taken to a sacrificial altar, where she is to be offered as food to Kong, the king of those people. After the sailors, armed with a large cache of weapons and ammunition, set off once again toward the island, Anne undergoes the final phase of a ritual during which Kong appears to embrace her. However, upon seeing her, the gigantic ape behaves differently than expected and decides to take the young woman instead of devouring her immediately upon hearing her screams. Jack and his team rush to her aid, but Carl is the first to arrive, shocked by the sight of the enormous creature, and informs his colleagues of what he has witnessed. Everyone prepares for the hunt, while the filmmaker raises his camera to record the entire adventure. Reaching the edge of a cliff, the rocks begin to crumble, and some creatures fall into an abyss, taking a portion of the crew with them. The survivors continue descending into the canyon until Bruce starts shooting at the dinosaurs, inadvertently causing a severe accident in the process. Creatures tumble one after another, and the people are forced to flee before being devoured by predators. When they arrive at a shelter, KG attempts to rouse Anne, but she pretends to be dead in order to avoid detection by the creature. She crawls along the ground and hides behind a rock, but when she discovers an exit, she is startled by the appearance of the gigantic ape, which blocks her escape. In an attempt to distract it, the actress begins to dance and perform acrobatics. However, when Anne stops her performance, the gorilla becomes enraged and starts destroying everything around it. Once it calms down, it allows Anne to continue on her path. Meanwhile, a group of crew members wanders through the forest until they stumble upon a cave where they record the entire battle. When the animal begins swinging a large log, trapping the men, the filmmaker loses his camera and must cling to the rocks as Kong overturns the massive log in the middle of the canyon. Simultaneously, Anne runs through the forest in search of her colleagues and encounters an enormous lizard devouring the carcass of another animal. She hides stealthily behind a tree, only to be quickly caught by a creature that begins pursuing her. Desperately trying to hide, she crawls into the roots of a tree, but the creature persists in its pursuit. Just as she is about to be devoured, the monster is suddenly expelled, its body utterly destroyed. At that moment, Anne is attacked by giant man-eating apes and must flee. But when she emerges from her hiding place, she realizes that an even more terrifying monster awaits her. She is being chased by a T-Rex, even though it carries prey in its mouth. The T-Rex advances toward the young woman, who tries to camouflage herself among the leaves to avoid capture, but soon discovers another predator is right beside her, ready to strike. Fortunately, just as Anne is about to be devoured, Kong appears and strikes the dinosaur. The battle would have been easily won if not for the emergence of another adversary, a towering creature that attacks the gorilla, which ends up being bitten on its arm. The ape becomes trapped as a third enemy suddenly appears, attacking from behind. Desperate to save Anne's life, Kong throws several punches at the monsters, trying to keep them at bay. During the duel, the ape manages to fling the dinosaurs off a rock, but ends up being dragged along with them during the fall. In the ensuing chaos, the actress becomes separated from her protector, clinging to tree roots dangerously close to a dinosaur determined to devour her at any cost. Immediately, Kong scales the rocks and dashes to help his new friend. With Anne's life hanging in the balance, Kong attacks the beast, while the woman finds herself ensnared in the jaws of another T-Rex. At that moment, the roots break and the creature plunges into the lower marsh. With no escape left, Anne is cornered, but Kong comes to her rescue once more. In a frantic sprint, the gorilla dashes while a huge reptile eliminates those remaining. Darkness quickly falls, and dozens of enormous insects begin to swarm. The group is besieged by various creatures, and Lampy ends up with its head devoured. In a desperate bid to help his friends escape the onslaught, Jimmy grabs a weapon and starts firing at the creatures, but his efforts prove futile as more monsters continue to emerge. The crew is on the brink of defeat when the captain and other members of the crew arrive to rescue them and distract the monsters, allowing their companions to flee. After losing so many comrades in this mad mission, everyone plans to return to the ship and head home, except for Jack, who is willing to risk his life further to save Anne. Meanwhile, Carl convinces the captain to attempt capturing the ape, planning to use the bottled sedatives on board to transport it to New York, unbeknownst to the director's own scheme. Jack attempts to sneak beneath the massive bat's roost until he reaches Kong's throne. At that moment, he sees Anne cradled in the arms of the sleeping ape. Once she awakens, the woman tries to slowly extricate herself from the animal's grasp so as not to alert it, but Kong wakes up and begins attacking Jack. Amid the ensuing struggle, the bats become frightened and assault the gorilla, allowing the couple a chance to escape. Jack uses a vine to descend from the mountain, but the ape manages to pull him back up. Furious at having lost a precious moment, Jack decides to hitch a ride on one of the bats in a bid to finally escape. Enraged, Kong chases after them through the forest. When the couple reaches their rendezvous point, Jack shouts for Carl to lower the bridge. but Carl intends to wait until the gorilla approaches. Nevertheless, Preston defies his superior's orders and cuts the rope, enabling the couple to rejoin the rest of the crew. After reuniting with the team, it isn't long before the actress realizes what is being planned. When KG appears with the intent of reclaiming her, she is attacked and captured with a net. Jack and Dan try to stop their colleagues from proceeding with the plan, but it is too late. Realizing that nothing can be done, the protagonist drags the woman toward the ocean, believing that she is being held against her will. Kong summons all his strength and manages to break free from the trap. The creature chases the group to the beach, where boats await to carry them to the ship. Captain Engelhorn throws a harpoon in an attempt to halt the beast, and then Carl hurls a bottle of sedative at it, unable to protect his friend. Anne watches in despair as Kong is felled, and a deep sorrow overwhelms her soul. A few weeks later, Broadway announces King Kong, the eighth wonder of the world, and hundreds of people crowd the ticket office to see the gigantic gorilla for the first time. Carl successfully completes a blockbuster project that brings in millions for him and his crew. Jack appears in public to honor his friend's work, feeling sorrowful as he recalls the day they left the island. The woman, having lost faith in her relationship with the playwright due to his inability to forgive after all that transpired, no longer wishes to continue their liaison. Then, Carl takes the stage and informs the audience that they are about to witness the tale of the adventure in which he embarked, and in which he lost exactly 17 comrades in tribute to these brave souls. The director explains that he has decided to share their adventure with the entire world. When the curtains open, everyone sees Kong chained on stage and unable to move. The once mighty creature, once considered the king of its realm, is now completely demotivated and has become Carl's puppet. Furthermore, the director presents Bruce as the hero who saved a woman from the clutches of that beast. Following a dance performance by a troupe showcasing the natives of Skull Island, the moment of sacrifice arrives. The young actress is offered as a tribute to the gorilla. As the woman takes the stage, Jack realizes that she is not the real Anne. Preston informs him that she had refused to participate in the play, thereby forfeiting all the money she would have earned. When Kong realizes that the woman is not his true companion, he becomes furious. Meanwhile, the real Anne participates in another performance in order to earn a living. As photographers enter the scene, Kong becomes even more agitated and uses all his strength to try to break free. Convinced that it is all part of the show, the audience is initially impressed, but soon everyone realizes that the situation has spiraled out of control, and they flee in panic amid applause. No sooner does Kong manage to break free from his chains than the gorilla seizes the actress, who was pretending to be his friend, and hurls her far away as everyone escapes. Jack is caught by a monkey that begins pursuing him ferociously. After leaving the building, Kong unleashes terror on everyone he encounters in the streets, attacking any approaching vehicles. The beast then sets off in search of Anne, capturing every blonde woman it finds along its path, believing that one of them might be the one it seeks. Hearing rumors about what is happening, the actress flees toward the concert venue, while Jack uses a car as bait to try and lure the ape away from the city. Immediately, KG chases Jack through the streets, and after a lengthy pursuit, manages to strike him. After the first blow, Jack collapses, and the gorilla quiets down when it realizes that the woman is approaching with him in its arms. Finally, Jack finds solace, slowly wandering through deserted streets until he reaches a frozen lake, where, in a moment of enchantment, Beauty and the Beast dance together under the moonlight. However, it isn't long before warplanes approach and begin firing upon the creature. Kong climbs to the top of a skyscraper in an effort to draw the enemies away, and despite being hit by numerous attacks, the woman decides to follow him. The animal remains steadfast in its mission to eliminate those people, using all its energy to attack the planes, knowing that Anne is in that tower. Jack decides to follow her, breaking through barriers to reach the top. Anne ascends a set of stairs to approach Kong and nearly suffers a fatal fall, but Kong manages to save her and carries her safely inside the tower. At that moment, the attacks continue, and the gorilla realizes that it will not survive the battle. Nevertheless, Anne chooses to remain by its side until the very end, even managing to convince the pilots to cease the assault. Unfortunately, it is too late, for Kong is gravely injured after bidding farewell to his dear friend. The animal grows weary of fighting and eventually falls from the skyscraper into the clouds. A few minutes later, the entire city gathers around the lifeless body of the creature, and everyone scrambles to take a photograph with King Kong. Witnessing the tragic end of the animal, Carl concludes that it wasn't the airplanes that killed him, but his love for Anne. And with that, the film comes to an end,